Welcome back, AP. Oh man, shout out Jenna Brady and Annie Hatch for being super chill and let me come in here and record my flip in Mr. Gardner's room, unfortunately. So if there's a slight echo, I apologize because the acoustics in here are really solid. Anyway, getting after it. We left off today in class talking about the problems within the Catholic Church going into the Reformation, right? We talked about how a lot of people were very pious, but they begin to criticize the church for its exuberant amounts of wealth, right? The Renaissance also, in your notes, you'll see where it says the Renaissance didn't help, mainly due to the fact that parishioners, people who were going to Mass all the time, started looking around at a lot of their churches and being like, is that fresco necessary? Is that sculpture necessary? Is it necessary for you to take all of my tithes and actually spend them on things to just make a church pretty? Isn't God our only real focus? So that's the ideas of the Renaissance ruining everything. And then also there are other problems with different movements like the conciliar movement, which we'll get into in a minute. So just a fair warning, there's some stuff on here that it's not going to have on the screen, but I'm going to need you to listen to me and write it down, because if I had my board behind me, I would totally use it. But it's whatever, all right? We'll get after it. Or maybe I'll actually move really, really quick in front of this board over here, and then I'll be able to use Mr. Gardner's board should I need to, okay? So anyway, but getting after it, though, we left off talking about the Benedictine rule, right? Or the rules of St. Benedict going into, I need something to sit this on. Anyway, there we go. There's no way. Is this going to work? I'm actually sitting this on one of those music stands for choir. If my Laura McInerney, I know you'd be freaking out right now because it looks like my computer's going to fall into the floor. But anyway, so the rules that were about poverty, chastity, obedience, those were actually added much, much later, right? Oh, another kind of funny original Benedictine rule that I was talking about in class today is the one about how four-footed animals are forbidden for monks to eat, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I guess chickens are fine, but deer, bovine, pig, no-go. All right, so anyway. They had to sleep with a light on the entire night, had to be able to pop up and actually preach at any moment. Vows of silence were a big thing about Benedictine rule. But the thing about it is those are some pretty crazy rules in the early 6th century part of things. But the thing about it is the church was kind of violating a lot of these principles, right? Because your monks, who are supposed to be the highest order of your priesthood, are living very, very shadowed lives and actually supposed to be just focusing on study all the time. So why is it that your pope, who is the guy that can tell them what to do, the one spending all of the money from the church on things like artwork in the Renaissance, right? So the thing about it is it's just it's a very big economy sucking thing. So had the Reformation already started before the 1500s is a really good question, right? Had it already had the wheels begun to move on the Reformation before that? 100%, all right? 100% yes. Due to the fact that the eggs were actually laid early on by these things, okay? And I need you to add to this list. Where it says etc., I need you to add to this one thing really, really quick, okay? It's called the donation of Constantine, right? So, you see that? All right, it's the donation of Constantine, all right? So it's right there. All right, so donation of Constantine was a really, really big thing. That was actually a big dispute in the church. There we go. Now I'm out of the way. So the conciliar movement was a big one. Conciliar movement was actually started by several different Europeans, one of the biggest ones being Jan Hus and the other one being John Wycliffe, right? So also Marsilio de Padua was another big one as well. Not Ficino, don't get freaked out. I understand you don't like all these Italian names, Shane. Now, anyway, but the thing about it is that all three of those men advocated actually against the ideas of the patriarchal pope, right? They didn't like the idea of a single figurehead being in charge of the church. They advocated for the conciliar movement, which is a council of cardinals instead to check and balance one another, right? Now, John Wycliffe, a lot of his works are going to be burned by the church. Marsilio, a lot of his works are going to be banned as well. Jan Hus was actually invited to this thing called the Council of Constance, where they were supposed to tell him, hey, guy, chill out. I know you're... Because actually, Jan Hus actually started the very, very first Protestant religion. They were called the Hussites, right? And they lived in Bohemia at the time, or the modern-day Czech Republic. But they invited him to a conference where they were supposed to be like, hey, buddy, I need you to calm down a little bit, and we promise that we'll let you come in and out. But then they ended up burning the guy at the stake, which is really, really messed up. So that's the conciliar movement in a nutshell, trying to move the church towards a council instead of a pope, right? And that was happening in the Middle Ages. It was like the 11 and 1200s. So then you got Erasmus, right, who advocated for a childlike faith of Christianity, who said Julius II's a total jerk, right? He's actually worried more about taking people over than he is anything else. Okay, I need to make sure that this thing is still recording really fast because I'm going to feel like an absolute idiot if it's not. No, okay, it is. Oh, wait, that just disappeared. Anyway, now, here we go. So that's Erasmus, right? Sir Thomas More writes this book called The Utopia that actually advocates for a less strict religious system and the ideas of like outlaw gold, which would of course irk the living daylights out of the church because they were such a financial institution at the time. Why is it like fading a little bit? All right, anyway, now, so then you've got Babylonian captivity. That's a big one we haven't talked about yet, and then we'll get to this guy when we talk about the donation to Constantine. Babylonian captivity was actually known as, it was a period also known as the Great Western Schism. Now, some of y'all are freaking out. You're like, oh, schism, we talked about that when we were freshmen. That schism is under Justinian, okay? The Justinian era schism is when the church became your Eastern Orthodox and then your Roman Catholic, right? Because early on, Christians differentiated on one central idea, and that's idolatry, right? Actually, I need you to write that word down. That's a really, really big one. So it's idolatry, right? I definitely misspelled it, but just know it. Idolatry is the idea of having statues of saints and murals of Mary and like images of holy figures that could possibly distract from God. And so in the Byzantine Empire in like the 500s AD, following the plague of Justinian and stuff like that, what ended up happening is like one sect of Christians was like, you should destroy all of these statues and things. They're a distraction from God. And then the Catholics were like, no, we need them. They actually help us with our worship. And they ended up actually schisming apart, and it became the Eastern Orthodox Church and then the Western Roman Catholic Church, right, in the former Roman Empire. Now, the Western Roman Empire, anyway. That's the Great Schism. The Western Schism was when in Babylonian captivity right here, also known as Babylonian captivity. I'm sure this is super confusing, but we'll talk about it tomorrow too. When literally there were multiple popes, okay? That's the biggest key word you need to know. There were tons of popes, right? At one point, there were 4 of them total. Now, at the same time. So what ended up happening is there was this king, King Philip I of France, I think he's Philip I, actually advocated to try and make a French pope, right? He wanted a loyal French pope, a French pope that was loyal to him. And one of the popes at the time actually advocated against him. They were like, you know, you don't get to pick the pope, and also I'm in charge, and papal supremacy, nah. And so this king actually ends up capturing this pope and beating him within an inch of his life. And then when he leaves the castle, he actually walks like partially back to Rome and then dies on his way back, okay? And so what that king did is he convinced the Council of Cardinals to elect a different pope, and that was Urban I, the guy we're talking about in class today, who ended up like burning some of those cardinals at the stake. And then the cardinals were like, no, we're just kidding. We want this guy Gregory VI. And then like it turned into a whole thing where there was a French pope and then there was a Roman pope. And it turned into more of a political battle where like every country was saying like, I want to be with this pope and I want to be with that pope and stuff like that. That's Babylonian captivity. And now the donation of Constantine was another big thing that started long before Martin Luther. That was actually apparently a letter that was written by the Emperor Constantine, you know, the guy that legalized Christianity in the Roman Empire. And the word on the street about this is the fact that apparently what ended up happening with that is a guy comes along named Lorenzo Valla, right? So Lorenzo Valla, very important name. Make sure you write him down. He actually proved that it was a forgery, and that was actually made much later and probably written by one of the Roman Catholic popes, right? The donation of Constantine, the letter itself, said that basically Constantine was giving the former Western Roman Empire to the church and that the Pope would be the king of this new empire, right? But Lorenzo Valla comes along and proves that that's not right and that's not true. So the Reformation wheels had already began to turn, right? This guy, though, Martin Luther's just the chicken that hatched the eggs, all right? So, like, he's the guy that pushes the entire thing forward. That's his big thing. Martin Luther and others hatched those eggs, right? Those eggs of resentment. And everything just kind of spiraled out of control following that. Whew! All right, so we're going to stop there simply because I feel like that's a lot to take in one flip. And you had to listen to a lot of stuff. So what I'm going to advocate that you do is rewind this back again real quick and kind of listen to it in a nutshell again really fast. And if some of y'all are worried about it, during the warm-up tomorrow, I'll throw these things up there and I'll be like, how did this person affect the Reformation? How did that person affect the Reformation? What's Babylonian captivity? Conciliar movement. All right, so it will just make sure you know this stuff, okay? I'm not going to leave you behind, don't worry. But this is where it does get a little more like a quagmire. And I don't mean like Family Guy quagmire. I mean like quagmire, like soupy structure that you could easily get yourself stuck in. All right, now anyway, but there you go. That's like the early causes of the Reformation. And then we're going to get into anti-clericalism tomorrow as well as pluralism, which are big problems that were leading into the church. All right, so very, very impressed by you guys so far. Love it when y'all come in every day. So proud. But have a good evening, AP. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?